Yeah, no worries.
Hey guys, I hope you're good. This is Max from MHS Prod and with Sylvain, the founder of Motion Designers Community, and we are today with Matthew Encina. Please welcome here.
Hey guys, nice to be on here. I know we had some technical difficulties the first 5 minutes, but I'm happy now that you guys can hear me and I get to connect with all of you guys. You know,
So,
it's funny. It's funny. We do live streams all the time over here, and we've done hundreds already at this point, and we always run into technical difficulties. So don't even sweat it, man.
yeah, so Matthew, for all the people that don't know you, can you tell us more a bit about you, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a creative professional now for about 15 years. I started as a print designer working on editorial design for magazines. And then about 11 years ago, I shifted over to motion design. I fell in love with animation and realized that, I could make a career out of animating and designing for TV commercials. Now, obviously, the landscape has shifted so much, and, it's all about content for web and all kinds of different platforms now, VR, AR, all over the place. And, I've been working now as a creative director at Blind, which has been around for 22 years now. And I've been a creative director here for about 7 years. And a couple of years ago, we also started a content channel called The Future, where we teach creative professionals about business and fundamentals and everything in between. So yeah, I'm a part of that. So got a lot of things going on and have made several transitions through my career as a creative.
Okay, that's perfect. Just to notice people, I just see that you've launched a new motion design course. So we will come back at the end on it. So
Mm-hmm.
you can explain a bit more about it. But for all the people that join now and that will quit a bit after or are watching the replay, you can go on the link under the description and see this lesson. So it was just to introduce a bit the fact that you now give lessons, right?
Yeah, I started teaching motion through our website, academy.thefuture.com, where I teach people the fundamentals of creating pretty spectacular style frames. So going from composition to content to story, how to put together mood boards, how to create your frame in Photoshop, and then all the way into what it looks like in a pitch. And I go over an example of what that frame looks like in a pitch. So it's pretty extensive, but it is pretty fundamentals based. I think it's good for people who are just starting out or for people who just need to brush up and kind of fill in the gaps for knowledge for the purpose of style frames, how to compose a strong one, and what it's used for.
Yeah, I see that you have a really strong background in design and photography. All your
Mhm.
compositions look really nice, and I think that's,
Thanks.
in my opinion, it's one of the weakness from many motion designers now is they are really good at animating, but it lacks sometimes composition and a good photography. So
Hmm.
I also give lessons in Paris, and most of the students kill myself in After Effects, but they don't know how to melt colors. So I think it's really important to have a good start before jumping into production.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with what we do as motion designers, there's so many different angles in which to approach it, and so many tools and skills that I think you need to master to just become really good at what it is that you do. Of course, you don't have to master everything, but learning good foundational composition and design techniques, along with really good animation and how to weight and time your stuff, like all of those things, I think are pretty key as far as just the foundations of what you should know.
Yeah, you need to know a lot of things, and that's also why we love our work, because you have so much things to study and experiment with. And I'm currently showing the work you done with Xbox, so people can see a bit of your work during the live chat.
Mm-hmm.
I see that you give lessons. You are doing animation on the future. You are also doing shows. And how do you find time to do client projects? Do you have tips for organization or any things?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing for me is that I have a solid team that I work with here at the studio at Blind. I have a team for the future that I collaborate with all the time, and then I have a big pool of freelancers that I bring in and out for projects like this, like we're looking at right now for Xbox. So that, I had a solid team of about 10 motion designers that were helping me throughout this process. And my primary role is mostly managerial now. So I help manage the team. I'm the main contact between the client and translating their wants and needs over to my team. So I'm less hands-on these days, just so that I could tackle more and balance more. So for me, the key for me is just all about delegation, trying to focus on the high level stuff that only I can do, and then delegating out all the things that I know I could hire somebody for or put something onto my team for.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you can focus on more projects and be honest with your skills. I see more and more designers that try to do everything by themselves, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they lose too much time with the client and they have less time, or sometimes they are stressed because of the client things. And I think it's really important to know where you are the best and work with a team. So how do you move into this direction stuff, creative direction? And when did you realize that you are the guy that do this?
Right. Yeah, I mean, because for me, my background was as a maker. I was a designer first, and then I did some animation. I picked up the tools, After Effects and Cinema 4D, and I was freelancing quite a bit at a lot of amazing studios. I was freelancing here at Blind for a couple of years, over at Logan, Murata, Laundry, Royale, just all over LA here. And I've been fortunate to learn from a bunch of other people and really sharpen my skills there. As far as when I made the transition to be more of a creative director, I think it was around 2010. I was freelancing here at Blind, and there was a couple of projects where we had some very tight deadlines, some very challenging work, and for whatever reason, I just really wanted to help the current creative director on the project to make the project come to fruition, because I realized there were so many things to get done in so little time. It was this 9-day project where we had to create a 30-second spot from start to finish. And the creative director at the time needed a lot of support. So I just naturally filled in the role of trying to pull in the team. Hey, I think you're really strong at this. You should do that. I'll focus on this, and then you guys focus on that. It just became very natural at that point that, I just saw the work that needed to get done. I know I couldn't do it myself, and we needed a little bit of guidance as far as the production goes. So I was looking at it more from a production standpoint. How do we divide and conquer and utilize our best skills to tackle everything? So I think it was around that time I started doing a couple of projects like that as an art director, helping the creative directors here at Blind guide the teams. And eventually, around 2011, Christo, the founder of Blind in the Future, he reached out to me and said, hey, we have a position here as a creative director. We're looking for some young blood to bring into Blind so that we could kind of mix things up a bit. And so I took the job. And ever since then, I had a really long journey of learning how to become a better creative director, because it's very, very different skills from just being a designer animator. You can be amazing at design and animation and learn all these technical skills, all these hard skills for how to compose a scene, how to time and animate things, how to do the production. But then on the creative direction side, it requires a completely different skill set, which is mostly soft skills. So communication, how do I understand what a client wants? How do I extract that and put that into terms that my team will understand and that I can direct them to create something visual that solves the client's challenge and needs. So that was a lot for me to learn and shift gears, because the mindset and what I do, what I had to do, was very different than what I was doing as a maker. Because as a maker, like, I know how to make something look really beautiful. I spend enough time, I will craft it and make it look really good. And early on, some of the challenges were, as I was doing creative direction on jobs, I find myself still jumping on the box, because it's like, oh, I didn't have the skills to be able to communicate to other artists and designers like how I want them to make something. So I'd have them make something, and then after hours, I'll jump on the box and then fix their frame or redo the animation, because I just didn't have the communication skills. Over time, I learned how to communicate better, how to give my designers and artists more space to do the work and perform their best, and allowing me not to take all of the burden of doing everything myself. So it was a lot of internal struggle at first, but eventually I was able to let that go and develop the soft skills, the management and communication tools that I needed to be able to work on multiple projects and work with multiple clients.
Yeah, and we were actually on the Coldplay's Inc. page, and that's really nice because you've done a really great breakdown that illustrates what you just told us, and that's so cool to see a breakdown like this. And so as a creative director, you need also to study a lot of things, and not only related to motion design, like you said, communication, photography, and that's really good to be really clear about what you do as a job, because like you said, people sometimes get lost, and I have some of my students that are afraid of being the creative director and also the main designer. So yeah, I think people will find their own way. Do you have any tips for someone really good at design but that don't know if he is going to be a creative director or a full designer? How do you feel it inside of yourself?
Well, first of all, let me preface that by saying that you don't have to be a creative director in your career. I feel like it's this kind of narrative that we see in the industry where everyone feels like, I'm a designer, I'm an animator, I'm an art director, and then I'm a creative director. I feel like that's kind of visually the perception that we all see, but I don't think it necessarily has to be that. I don't think everyone has it in them, or the need or the desire to actually want to do those things. As a creative director, you have to be responsible for a lot of different things and responsible for a lot of other people. But that's not for everyone. I think if you don't feel like you want to have to tell other people what to do or to manage other people's time, and you just want to become like the best technical person, whether that's like particle animation or simulation, or you want to be the best designer, you could hyper focus on any particular facet of those things. So I don't want to mislead the community and continue that message where people feel like they have to become a creative director, because it's really not for everyone. Because to be honest, like I don't do a whole lot of making these days, or I haven't for the past decade really. But because I've gotten the itch, because the motion design community has been so amazing lately. I see what you guys post on your Instagram, and just I see everybody making stuff every day, and it's fantastic. So recently, I've made the personal transition to spend my after hours working on personal work to balance that out. So I guess the long-winded way of what I'm saying is that creative direction is not for everyone, so don't feel obligated to go down that route. And for me, it's just like, I'm trying to find the balance between, running the business and the clients over here, but then also being able to express myself as a designer, as an artist on my free time. So I'm in this interesting transition state, but I'm pretty happy with tackling all those things.
Thank you for this feedback. And yeah, for all the people in the chat, yeah, you can ask question. And Gaurav say, can you tell him thank for doing an awesome job for the song Ink by Coldplay. So maybe people want to know how it was to work with Coldplay.
Yeah, Coldplay was very fun to work with. They're cool. So when we first reached out to them, because we had a relationship with the creative director on their team, we reached out because we wanted to make a music video. The thing with music videos, obviously, there's not really any money in that industry, but it's a great marketing tool, right? A lot of people can see it, especially if it's a well-known band like Coldplay. So when we were initially pitching ideas for them for their music video, Ink, they were just looking for a couple of treatments. So me, Chris, and the other creative director here, Greg, we all pitched in treatments, and I had pitched this idea of an interactive music video, which at the time I didn't know how to make. I had no idea how to make it. I just knew that, technology is getting better for the internet. Like, there's some very cool things happening out there in the space. And I really wanted to work with them. So I pitched some crazy idea for something I didn't know how to do. And I put together a treatment saying, oh, we're going to create this animated music video, and you could click around and it will change the journey of the character throughout the music video. A couple of weeks went by, didn't hear anything. I thought I didn't get it. I was like, they hated it. It was a stupid idea, whatever. And then we got a call and they said, we love the idea. How soon can we start? Let's go. And I was like, oh my gosh. I thought this job was dead. I have to go. And so I started calling up all of my developer friends. It's like, hey, I have this idea. I don't know how to make it. How would you make this? So luckily, I have a couple of friends who I could reach out to as resources. I talked to a couple of the development studios. They all gave me different answers. And some of them even said, like, yeah, you know what? You could totally make this video in the future. Like, the technology is getting there. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't even make this. Why did I pitch this idea? This is crazy. This is so dumb. But luckily I found these guys. At the time, they were called Interlude, but now they've rebranded and they're called Echo. And they're based out of, I believe, Israel, New York. And they were developing a platform at the time for interactive videos. So exactly what I was looking to do. My EP at the time, my executive producer, Tobin, said, hey, why don't you reach out to these guys? So I reached out to them, said, hey, we're trying to make this thing. It's for Coldplay. Wanted to see if you guys want to collaborate. They said, yeah, we would love to, because at the time they were looking to grow their company. We talked, and they had the perfect platform for exactly what I wanted to do. So after many calls, I found the right partner. And then for the next maybe month and a half, we animated all the different sections of the music video, and we work with them to adapt it for their platform. So that was very interesting. And throughout the process, we only had one check-in with Coldplay. They're dream clients. They came in maybe like halfway through the process, where maybe the first 45 seconds or a minute was animated, and the rest of the 2 minutes of the music video was still kind of like stills or hand drawn. Like, it's not fully complete yet. But so they came in, Chris Martin and the band, they all sat down and they were watching, and I was just clicking around showing how the interactivity works. And after about 30 seconds, Chris Martin said, stop, I've seen enough. And I was like, oh my gosh, here it is. They want us to redo everything. He hates it because, it's like very nervous. It's like, this is an artist, somebody I grew up listening to, I really love, and I want to respect their art form, by adopting my art to that. And after about what seemed like an eternity of dead silence, he said, I love it. It's like, when is this thing going to get done? I was like, oh, I was like, great. And so they went on their way. Well, actually, before they left the studio, we gave them a little studio tour. And one funny little story is, I was trying to show Chris Martin the process. It's like, here's the storyboards we designed. Here's the little sketches that we did. Here's some of the visual development frames that we made. And he's like, okay, cool. And then he stopped and he walked over to one of my artist desks. He's like, "What is that?" And my artist was describing to him, and he's like, "That's so amazing. So you mean when you draw on this tablet, it appears on the screen there?" And he's like, "Yeah." So of all the things that Chris Martin was going to be amazed by, it wasn't the artwork or all the interactive stuff we were doing. It was the Wacom tablet technology that he was surprised by. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But I mean, he was very awesome. They were great people to work with, and obviously the project was very fulfilling for all of us to tackle.
Yeah, that's super cool, and that's really important to people to know this. Yeah, you can work in music for marketing, and I heard too many times people that don't work in the music industry because you don't have money, but you have exposure, and that's really important to balance between your exposure and your project. So I like the fact that you tell this that there's no money, but yeah, that's a huge thing in marketing, because many people forget it and try only to focus on doing money, and sometimes you have more creative freedom doing music videos, and that's really important to have. For you, how important it is to keep your ideas and be free, in creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think with that, there's definitely a balance. At the time, I was still doing a lot of client work, and sometimes, if I were to give that some bit of advice now, just from a lot of the people that I've met recently, like Beeple and Gmonk, like people that we've had on our channel recently on the future, one reoccurring thread with all of them is that this is their feedback is make something that you love, be passionate about that, and then people will seek you out for that thing. So I think the approach today would be very different, and I think that's why I've made a big change in even my Instagram feed and doing a lot more personal work, is because I'm looking to express myself there and hopefully do more work like that stuff. So it's very different, but it's a careful balance definitely between the client work and your self expression.
Yeah, I have few people in the chat asking question like how do we set a price, and so I'm currently showing the future YouTube channel. Can you tell us a bit more about what's the future and what you're doing, and why people should watch videos on this channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So the future is a YouTube channel and it's a website, thefuture.com. And what our mission is to empower creatives and lift the community. Because right now we've been blessed, like me, Chris Doe, the founder of The Future and Blind, to be very privileged. Like we were here in LA, growing up in a community and where the community here really valued creativity. TV commercials in the early 2000s to the late 2000s was all about animation. So we were kind of like in the precipice, like the moment where it was the height of motion design here in terms of money goes. And we went to, both of us went to Art Center. So we're very privileged to go to a prestigious school. And all of this stuff, like the information just felt like it was all bottled up here. Like nobody was sharing anything. And that felt wrong to us. So for us, our goal really is to take all the information, all the lessons that we've learned over the years through school, through running a business, through working with clients, and disseminating that and sharing that with the world. Because the thing is, there's no reason to bottle up any of those secrets. There's no industry secrets that's going to keep you sharp, because Chris's philosophy is, he'll learn something today and he's going to teach you tomorrow. Also, he feels like if you're holding on to secrets, like, oh, I won't tell anybody how I made this thing, that means there's nothing special about you. It's like you're holding on to one gimmick, one trick. And so for him, he's all about open sharing, and just like whatever he's learning right now, he's going to teach you tomorrow. So our goal really is just to uplift the community, because we see a lot of people around the world who are aspiring designers or creatives or artists, and they're not getting what they're worth, or they are discouraged by the community around them because it feels like design, animation, creativity is not a respected respected career path. And we're here to uplift the community and teach you otherwise. And our goal is just to educate as much as possible.
Yeah, so people need definitely to check the future. And yeah, that's really nice. I see lives with people, with Andrew Kramer, and that's really nice to have the possibility to share with everybody all these tips. And that's one good point about internet. So feel free to check the future, and we have a bit more questions. So Dario asks, what important things would you tell a learning motion designer to improve the quality of the work?
I think, let's see. So the question is, what are some tips to improve the quality of motion design work? I think on the design side is learning how to compose a frame, right? Like the simplest thing is learning the rule of thirds and kind of aligning a lot of your elements to that. Or for Instagram, for whatever reason, symmetry works really well for Instagram, and people tend to like those images. So I think composition is huge. If I have one tip, which I teach in my course, one tip is all about contrast and maximizing the contrast in all of your frames. And I'm not purely just talking about values. I'm talking about contrast in everything. So sizes and shapes. So sizes, like I try to make my frames with something really big, something medium size, and something very, very tiny, just so that it feels very dynamic when things are composed. Contrast in terms of value, obviously, as things get further back, things that I don't want people to focus on, I have those have less contrast. So the areas I want them to focus on, it's going to be sharp and have the darkest and brightest values. So just being able to learn how to control the eye and direct the viewer at what you want them to look at and the story that you want to tell to them, I think is very, very key. Because I think there's a lot of great exploration in the community right now. I see people doing everydays, which is fantastic. People getting very technically sound. But then there's another part of this as a career. I think you can do that stuff as an artist and make stuff for yourself, and that's wonderful. But as soon as you want to get paid for that, you're getting hired to solve somebody else's problem. So the bigger thing is trying to understand what is your client's goals, what are their objectives, and learning to translate that into frames or to animation, to commercials, to content that helps solve that problem. So unless you're doing that, you're doing a disservice to your clients. So I think one key thing that people need to learn outside of how to compose is how to solve problems. How do you what problem are you solving for your client? Do you understand what the challenge is so you know what you're making? Otherwise, you're just making stuff randomly, and then there's no point for that.
Yeah, we have common points, and for Dario, I will also recommend the same book as you. By watching your resource on your website, I saw that you recommend Framed Ink book.
Oh yeah, I love that book.
It's for comics, but as a motion designer, it helped me a lot because it's talking about values, contrast, dynamics, and lighting. So Dario, read this book. I think it's really important to understand composition and storytelling, and that's really nice. And you can just check the Matthew website, and I think you have a lot of great books to start, and focus on composition and problem solving, because if you want to earn money, you need to.
Absolutely. So I mean, there's the technical side of things, which I think the community is getting really good at. There's plenty of tutorials out on YouTube right now, but there's not a whole lot based around how to serve your clients. And I think that's really important as people want to get paid for the work that they do, is just trying to understand how to solve clients' problems and really servicing them. Because the bigger the problems you can solve for a client, the higher value you become as far as what you're worth to those clients.
Thanks. We have a lot of questions. I don't know if we will answer to everyone because we have so much things to see in the live. I just see one thing that I see so much time, and I want you, Matthew, to beyond my side, I can read no bills are paid with exposure. What
Yeah.
what can you tell about this? Because there's no black or white point on this. Can you explain a
Yeah.
bit more about this
Yeah.
sentence?
A- Absolutely. So, I mean, what we're doing right now, this is exposure exchange, right? So, my channel, The Future, and my brand, Matthew Encina, is cross promoting with you right now, right? And trying to engage with your community. So, right now, there's no money being exchanged between us, yet this is exposure. And what is that exposure going to grant us? That means my audience is going to grow, your audience is going to grow. And as a result of that, now we have a platform to do what we want with that. And I think that's really crucial. So I think the value of exposure really is to be able to grow your brand, grow your audience, and leverage that audience in the future. I think if you, for instance, if you look at what we do at the future, it's like 99% of the stuff we do is 100% free. So we put out all these videos, several videos a week on sometimes tutorial based stuff, sometimes mindset stuff, sometimes client and pitching stuff. All of that is free. That's all top of the sales funnel awareness. So people are aware of our brand. We're growing our audience. And then every so often, we're going to come up with some product like my Style Frames course. And then we will ask the community, if you loved everything else that we've done, we've created something especially for you. And from there, now we have an audience to sell stuff for. So I think one key thing with exposure and building an audience, I would prefer that everybody does it for themselves. Meaning, if you are, or if you're thinking about doing free work for exposure, do it for yourself. Build your own brand and do that for yourself. I don't think that it's in your best interest to seek clients out that are looking for free work to do free work for them. You know, so, some people, for instance, like I got lucky with Coldplay, like they have a huge exposure, so it makes total sense for me to do a job with them, even though I know I'm not going to make a whole lot of money off of that thing. I just know that grows our brand, grows our exposure, and then that we are able to get more calls or more leads based off of that thing. So I think for me, it's just learning how to maximize your free time, make some stuff that you could build an audience around the stuff that you love doing and stuff that you love creating, so that people will reach out to you and to make that stuff that you love doing. So I think that's the key there.
Yeah, a few people asked something more technical, just
Mm-hmm.
asking what tool do you use, and I see that you have the answer on your Behance. So you use a lot
Mm-hmm.
Cinema 4D, Octane Render, and After Effects, right?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the tools that we use here. We're a C4D studio here at Blind. We've done a lot of Maya stuff, V-Ray, Maxwell. So we've kind of gone through all the pipelines over here. We're pretty flexible. We're not locked into anything. For me personally, I like using Cinema 4D and Octane. But on a couple of recent projects that I've done, we've used Redshift just to try it out. Works wonderful for production, where I had a team of about 8 people who are all working on it, and Redshift is fantastic. And I think for me, I'm personally gonna pick that up as a tool to learn a little bit better, and then see if I can to do that to focus on learning Redshift.
Nice. So we will jump a bit more on the talk. If you have some question on the live chat, please feel free to write it, and we will answer probably more at the end, because we will talk a bit about your new course. I
Mhm.
see that one of your strongest point is the composition, and you've just released a course on the Future Academy. I will let the link under the chat, and you also have it on
Mhm.
the under the description. And what's this course? I will let you explain to people what's inside, what you will learn, and everything.
Yeah, I feel like so Style Frames is a very particular kind of niche in the production pipeline. Style frames, we've used it over the years to pitch ideas about what we want to do. So for instance, like the Coldplay video, we created some style frames to pitch ideas there. For the Xbox stuff, we created some pitch style frames to win that work. So style frames, I think, are very critical for a lot of people who are doing style frames in order to get client work. And I feel like I just wanted to put together all of the fundamentals of creating a very solid frame, regardless of what software or platform you're using, and learn how to compose a frame that's dynamic, that tells a story, and then give you all of my tips and tricks for how to, do color correction, how to paint, just a lot of technical stuff in there. How to put together mood boards, like how do you communicate your idea? So I kind of take you through step by step through every chapter of the course, from blocking out the black and white style frame, the composition of it, then putting together mood boards. How do you find all the assets that you need for the mood boards so that you can convey to your client and even to yourself, what's the style? What is the style of this frame going to be before I spend the time actually making it? So a lot of pre-planning on that. Then from there, we go into the actual creation of the style frame, which in this course, I teach it through Photoshop, just taking a bunch of different assets that I also teach you how to search for assets. So I pull all these assets together. I show you how to paint and compose the final frame, how to light it in Photoshop, painting and lighting there, and then color correcting there. And then the very last chapter in there, I show you an example of what one of my pitch decks look like. So one of my winning pitch decks, I kind of break down the process of how I open my pitch deck, what I say about it, how I present the work, how I use mood boards and sketches to help fill in some of the ideas, what the methodology and the process would look like if we were to animate it, and a closing statement there. And that was one of the pitches that I did win, and I just break that down so that everybody has the full context of the fundamentals of creating a style frame, how it's used, and what it looks like in context of a pitch.
Will you do some mentorship on this course, or is it just videos that you can stream?
Oh, ask the question again.
Will you do a bit of mentorship, or is it just videos that you stream on the website?
Oh, right. So yeah, right now the course is just a video course. So it's just you play and you could just watch that at your leisure. It's available for the lifetime that the site is up. But there's not really any direct mentorship in there. We do have a Slack group that as soon as you purchase one of our products, we have a Slack group. And, I will from time to time just answer any questions in there about the material. So it's not a direct feedback thing where I'm carving out time every week to sit down with the current students, because it's an ongoing enrollment. It's not like a 2-month engagement as one class. It's just ongoing forever kind of thing. So depending on the, how things go over there, we may try different structures or different classes in the future. Me, Chris, and Ben Burns, one of the other creative directors here, we recently completed our first business bootcamp course where we taught creatives how to close more business and multiply their time. And that one was much more intense, more hands-on, but at the same time, because we made ourselves available, it's also more expensive because we had to carve out time from our client work to be more hands-on. So there's a big range of stuff on the Future side as far as products, all the way from free stuff like our videos where we just teach as much as we can on there. We have a couple of downloads on our site on thefuture.com where you could download, have a guide there for how to create dynamic compositions. And then we have some paid stuff that, follows the range of like how much attention you need or some of the specific things that you would like to learn. So we're constantly trying to fill that in and trying to recreate all the great things that we've learned through our lifetime and make that available to everyone around the world.
Yeah. So if you want to download for example, the dynamic composition guide, you just need to go on the Future website and check resource. And you have all the free downloads. So I will let the link in the description so people can check. And we have a question from Mark asking, how do you determine project timelines, and do you build in time for research and development? or
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Mark. And it depends. A lot of it is driven by the client. And sometimes a client will have a hard deadline. Like, for instance, for Xbox, they have E3 and they have to have all this material ready by that time. So we just back out of that. So whenever we get the call, whether that sometimes we've been afforded 6 months to work on something where we could actually allow for some R&D time, like this Xbox One X project. We got called in January and the due date was all the way in June. So we had a long lead time where we could spend me and another artist just like focus on developing different methodologies for how to produce this, do a little bit of R&D up front until we felt comfortable with how to produce all of this. And then we tightened a deadline for probably the last 2 months leading up to June. So it's really determined on the client. And sometimes if we have the luxury of time, that means I just have less designers and artists working on it and more time to just review and spend time reflecting on the project. Of course, if we have something like 3 weeks, I just stack more people on there. I bring in more freelancers and I divvy out the task as best as I can so that we can get it done in time. And in some cases where clients are asking us to do something really crazy, like you have 1 week to make a 60-second animated spot, we usually say no. We tell them it's impossible for us to do. I'm not saying that it can't be done. It's just we're not the people to do that. So there's been a lot of opportunities where we just say no if it's not the right fit.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. I have other question. Pedro is asking how do you train the good taste? So the full question was, hey Matthew, I think a key aspect of becoming a better artist is developing a good taste, which is hard to describe. How can you train on that?
I think a lot of that, obviously there's some subjectivity to that, but there's some objectivity to that. So the things that I've learned in school and my career, and which I teach in my course, is there's a lot of fundamentals. There's rules that if you follow them, you're going to make a good frame, right? So there's certain things. So I think when you're composing any shot or any frame, you think about why. Why am I telling, or why am I creating this frame? What is its purpose? What is this frame or this moment or this scene? What does it have to say relative to this single moment and relative to the entire story of the movie, the commercial, whatever you're making? And then from there, it's like, well, now how do I tell that story? And that's the technical aspect. Like, how do I frame the subject matter in there? How do I compose it? And there's tons of rules that come from cinematography, from design, lots of stuff that I've kind of picked apart and learned over the years, and I've kind of boiled down in my course, which to me is all about contrast. It's like having really dynamic compositions through contrast and really focusing the eye on what you want the user to focus on at that time. So I think to answer that question, you can teach a whole lot of technical stuff, but understanding why you're making what you're making, what you're trying to say, and then understanding the best way on how to do that. Like, there's many layers to that, and I feel like you can teach somebody that 90% chunk. The last 10% probably is all subjective at that point. And I work with a lot of artists where I give them space to express themselves. And what I typically do is I give them a sandbox, meaning I talk to the client, I know what they want, and I define in very clear parameters to the people that work with me and say, like, you can make anything you want as long as it solves these challenges, hits this goal, and follows these parameters. Because I feel like by giving limitations to people, like, that's having limits is the things that make you the most creative. I feel like if you can make anything under the sun, it's probably the most challenging type of project because anything's possible. So there's so many possibilities. So by working with people, if you want to teach them, I think if you minimize and limit the amount of rules they have to play with, then it makes them able to focus and be creative. So one thing that we teach in our typography course is when you begin, you only have one typeface and one weight. And then the next part is one typeface and two weights. So it's like you're progressively adding layers to that so that people can understand from the bite-sized level all the way up to building out, a poster, for instance. So for the style frames course, I do something similar, where first I teach you how to compose a frame in black and white. I provide all the assets, so you don't have to make anything. You just have to compose the frame. So I'm just teaching you how to compose a frame so you could just focus and train your eye on what to look for and how to build your frame so that it tells a story. Then from there, I take the next part, which is how do you determine the style of this frame? There's a lot of things that you can search for, and I teach you how to put together mood boards so that you can articulate to somebody what this will look like. From there, I teach you how to find assets. How do you search for the images that you need so that you can make the frame that you want? And then from there, I teach you the technical stuff of how to paint it. So it's very much like Karate Kid, like teaching somebody little pieces at a time so that they could focus on just the one thing. And then eventually that stacks up and builds up, and by the end they're a complete person. They're a complete designer or artist who have learned all this stuff a bit better.
Nice. We have more questions, and that's so cool that people are very active and very curious, and some people told us that they love the stream, so thank you guys.
Awesome.
Claudio is asking, in other words, a style frame is essentially a beautiful, more realized storyboard.
Yes.
And if so, would you stress more focus on becoming adept at style frames or storyboard?
I mean, if you could do everything, that would be awesome. And, with a lot of the projects that I work on, so for instance, the Xbox project, what I did is I designed some of the frames. I had other designers who were designing a few of the keyframes, but I also hired a storyboard artist to map out the entire sequence. So for me, I always try to build a team around me that helps us be the strongest we can be as far as presentation goes. So I know I'm not the best artist when it comes to sketching stuff, but seeing a bunch of sequential black and white storyboard frames is very helpful for a client to understand the sequence of what's going to happen. At the same time, some clients, they don't have the broad imagination. They can't fill in the gap. If they just saw black and white storyboards, they're going to be like, I don't get it. What is it going to look like? And that doesn't look beautiful to me, right? So that's where things like style frames really come into place, because what you're doing is you're painting a realized moment in time of what it will look like. So those two things together help fill in what the story's going to be and then what it's going to look like. And then, depending on the project, sometimes we put in motion tests to show what we'll animate like, or we'll provide mood boards to fill in any gaps. So the course that I teach helps kind of fill in the gaps for all of those things. And I think they're all important when trying to convey your idea. So the more tools at your disposal that you have, the better storyteller that you become, both in words and visuals. I think the better you're going to be at conveying your ideas to your clients and people you work with.
Yeah, thank you. So as we do not have too much time left, and that I want to ask you some question personal about your taste and everything, I will only select two latest question on the chat. Thank you guys for being so active. I think many questions are already answered on the FUTUR channel, so just subscribe and check out all the videos, because I think you have so much to learn. I will select one question now. Derek asks, how do you know when you've got the right creative direction to move forward? And is it possible to start the later steps before you have the direction?
Okay, so that's a two-part question. How do you know when you have the right direction? To answer that is when you confirm it with your client. So for me, I spend a lot of time on the initial kickoff call with my clients, trying to understand what is their goal, what is this video or this piece that I'm making for them, what does it need to do, what does it need to communicate, who's their audience, what's important for them to understand. And then creative parameters, what does it need to look like, what can it be, what it can't be, what are the mandates, what must I include in here, what can I not include in here. So I'm creating this giant, which is just a one-pager, essentially, creative brief for myself that captures all of the ideas, all the needs and wants of the client. What I do is I share that with the client, and they confirm from there. I tell them, hey, client, this is what we're going to create. I just want to make sure that we're all aligned here. So everything that we design is going to be based off this information that I gave you. So if we're aligned here, I will take this, and this will be our North Star for the project for everything we create. So once the client signs off, they say, yes, great. And at this point, I haven't made anything. Like, I haven't designed a single thing. It's all communication. So then I take that, I have my creative brief, and I share that with my team. You know, I'll work with a few designers sometimes, and I'll say, hey guys, I want you to help me solve this problem. You guys can make anything as long as it solves all of these problems and works within these creative parameters. So from there, we have a very objective way to evaluate the work. So, you know, I'll check in with them a day or two later. I'll look at their frames, the things that they've done, and I ask them to explain to me. It's like, okay, present your work to me and let's talk about how it solves these challenges. So they have to be very objective in what they're presenting, because I know I have to take their work, put that together in a pitch, and then sell that back to the client. Because I have to turn around to the client and say, like, hey client, remember, these are the things that we laid out when we first spoke. These are the goals we're trying to hit, and here's how the work solves those challenges. So it becomes very objective. It's no longer subjective at this point. 90% of the conversation is very objective. Once the client signs off on that, it's like, great, we love the style, we love the narrative, we love the challenges you're solving. That's when we go make it. That's where it gets expensive, right? That's where I build out my team. I have a bunch of animators, and we just build out the thing that we had just signed off from clients. So for me, I like to do it in kind of like a phased engagement steps there. Before I bring on an entire team, I need to make sure that I have a concentrated focus time to really focus on a challenge and making sure that we're all solving that together, and that everybody is aligned from my team to all the way up to the client. And I'm just the person in between who's translating for everybody.
Okay, and I will select a latest question, but yeah, some people on the chat have already kind of answered. Gaurav is asking, should we be a generalist or an expert at one thing? And I think that's a pretty common question, but we want your opinion.
I think you get known for being a specialist, and you get hired often for being a generalist. So what I'm trying to say is that all of the people that I've worked with over the years, they've been a specialist at one thing. They were an amazing designer at cinematic title frames, or amazing designer at 2D character design, or an amazing 2D character animator. So I've known them for that one thing. They're specialists at the one thing. Over time, they develop secondary and tertiary skills where they become more of a generalist. Like, I know I could hire them for character design, and that's what I think of them for. But because they do such a solid job on that, and I could see their portfolio bleeding out doing other things, I've already developed a relationship with that person. I know they could pull through, so I would trust them for other things. You know, it's like, oh, you know what? I didn't know that you are doing visual development painting now. I'll hire you for that because you've pulled through on everything else I've hired you for. So I think it's key to have one core skill that you're really good at that people can identify you for. And here's why. Because for me, when I'm building a team for my job, I'm only looking mostly for specialists, because I have very compartmentalized things that I need to do. I need a storyboard artist. I need a style frame designer. I need an animator who can model. I need a person that can light and render. And then I need a compositor. So I'm looking for very specific roles. Usually I don't look for generalists to fill in all those roles. I know for people who are specialized in each of those categories, because I want the best for my project. So I will hire them and farm out all of those roles, you know, and bring them onto my team. So I think it's key to have one key skill, very, very strong, and then you just develop your secondary and tertiary skills over time, and you will freelance for the same people more often than not. You'll develop great relationships, and they'll keep you on board for many, many things.
So right now I have a few questions for you about your personal tastes. So just to give people new artists to follow, what's the three artists three motion designer that you look the most lately?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, there's so many people that I follow on Instagram. Uh, I'm
Yeah,
trying to think like who's really You know, one person that I've been looking at a lot recently, who's I feel like has influenced my work, is James Jean. He's an amazing illustrator, and
James.
yeah, James Jean. Like he is freaking fantastic, and I feel like I've always looked at his work ever since I was in school, and I've kind of fell in love all over with his work again. So if you go to his page, you'll definitely see he's an illustrator, he's a painter. He's just fantastic at what he does. So I've been looking at his work a lot lately and just getting influence from his work. Another person that influences me a lot is my wife. My wife, I met her here at Blind. We were freelancing together at some point. So she was a motion designer, and more recently, she's shifted over to becoming more of an illustrator and more of an artist outside of being a designer. And I see her every day working on something. You know, she's constantly drawing something, constantly making something. And for me, I got inspired by that. And she helped me kind of realize that, you know, I should be doing more personal stuff for myself, because over the past decade, I've only been doing stuff for clients and I have not done any personal work at all. So she's definitely inspired me lately to do my own stuff.
You've made a project with her, right?
Oh, this is a different artist.
Oh, okay.
So this is Maggie Chang. She used to intern for us at Blind. Now she's an artist over at Buck. She's
Okay.
an amazing illustrator. And I'm friends with her. And you know, I ran out of stuff that I wanted to do personally, but I still wanted to make stuff. And I figured, you know, I really like her style, so I reached out to her and said, hey, you know, I'd love to collaborate on something. Let's make something together. And she was totally down. So what she did is we were ideating. She was sketching a lot of stuff, some ideas. And then she was painting some watercolor textures for me. And then I built some scenes in 3D. So we did a little collaboration there. And the results have been pretty amazing. It's been pretty fun to interpret something that was very 2D and put it into a 3D space and learn how to translate her particular style into 3D, because that was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a really good exercise because most of the time when we think about collaboration, we do not think that far, you know, melting 2D, 3D and things just for a collab. Sometimes we want to stay in our comfort zone, right?
Absolutely.
So that's really nice. And what do you listen? Do you listen music for work? Did it help you to get ideas?
Yeah, you know, one artist that I've been listening to lately is Alina Baraz. Like, I really like her music. Her voice is kind of mesmerizing. So she has a great voice, and that's inspired some of my work, just listening to her in the background. A lot of down tempo, like chill hip hop beats. Like, I really like that stuff in the background. Sometimes when things get really intense and I need to focus, either focus writing or focus putting together a pitch, I like to listen to classical music. I think just the lack of lyrics there and the intensity of the music helps me synthesize my thoughts and stay focused. And then for casual stuff, like I really like just old hip hop music. So like late 80s, early 90s, like the golden era of hip hop music. I really love that stuff. So for casual stuff, I like to listen to that.
Great. I see that people are asking more questions. Sorry, guys, we will not have time to answer to everybody as new people comes, and I think we can talk during hours and hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Matt, for your time. Thank you for sharing all these good things with the community. And for all the people that just came right now, you can watch the replay. And you must know that Matt have just made a new course that you can find on the future. It's called Motion Design Style Frame, and you will learn how to do a style frame and why is it really important in production. So you have the link under the description, and I think Matt is the good person to teach this, because before checking his website and the books he have read, I've kind of read the same books. So you know who's who. And thanks again. Your website is really complete. So just check his social medias, and thanks again for all the people that came. And hi, Travis Davids. Travis Davids is watching.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. I watched some of his tutorials for some of my work. He's awesome. And that's the thing that I love about the community. I'm so glad that I can come on and share my stuff with you guys, because I feel like the community, especially the Cinema 4D community, is very giving. You know, they learn something and they teach it, and then everybody learns off of them. So I'm trying to contribute and give back. So I feel like so privileged to be a part of this amazing creative community, and I hope that people are encouraged to share the things that they do, because everybody has something very special that they do. And I feel like if you teach somebody what you know, you become a master of that thing. So you know, that's part of my process, is learning and growing. It's just like by teaching other people, I master the things that I've learned throughout the years. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad I could answer the questions here. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks again. And if you have few last word for the community.
No, I mean, I think just keep creating, keep growing, keep sharing, man, because this is what makes our community thrive. When everybody shares and everybody teaches, we all lift up, and we all grow from there, and everyone can make a living of the things that they love doing. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So let's just keep growing together.
Okay, so thanks everybody. We have so much nice message, and thanks for all the people that came and watched the live, leaving nice message and asking question, because the community made this live great, because we had a question, and that's really important. And see you guys, and be sure to check every links that we have in the description. I think you have everything, website, social medias, the course, and you also have our social medias if you want to join our Facebook group, Discord, and anything. So see you guys, and see you.
All right, bye guys.